thank you for braving the Kolkata freezing chill. You should have worn a cap, no? Are you sure? You don't need a cap?
I did. I just took it off. So.
I, when I was reading the book, I realized that you talk about going to drawing class when you were a kid. And I read that and then I thought, oh, I thought that was something only Bengali mothers made their children do. How did you end up doing to drawing class?
Well, my mother had a very best friend who was right there, who was Bengali. Not that she sent her son to drawing class. I actually wore these horrible kind of polio braces, and I had a problem with my legs as a kid, and it took me years to get my physiotherapy. So, and I'm just interested in the arts, and my mother, I have to say, was amazing because she just pushed and pushed and pushed, and I mean, these are not things that I mean, we did drawing in school, but if you liked it, we had amazing craft teachers. We did a lot of things, creative things, that perhaps if we weren't in South Bombay or I don't know what it was like elsewhere, might not have done. And all these things that you spend hours and hours on and you develop a passion for always come back and help you. It's like a skill. Because fashion is about so much communication, and you start by either drawing an idea or if you're a great pattern maker, you pattern make it or whatever it is.
But did you like drawing classes?
I loved it. Even when I went to business school at UPenn, I mean, my poor father got me to go there just to. I went because it made him happy. He said, "Since I'm spending all this money, can you please go to Wharton?" Actually, I think I'm one of the few people who graduated without knowing how to read a balance sheet. But I did every possible class in the drawing school, and what was it at that time? You basically drew nudes, and they take you on trips to the Metropolitan Museum and other museums, and teach you about art history. It was amazing.
I also found out that not only could you draw, but you won a prize when you were in school for drawing.
Well, it's called the Best Artist Prize, and yes, they choose one person who's normally in the 11th grade. And a funny anecdote around that is that my English teacher, who was amazing, came up to me and said, "Well, where are you going to get drawing high fashion models?" And I said, "I don't know. I just like doing it. It comes out of my hand." And we drew these big processions of wedding or costume. I just like doing it.
Did you ever meet your your English teacher
No,
later?
I've sent him many messages about the same. He lives now in Colombia. So I make sure he knows I should send him the book as well.
Um, and then you go to Dune School, and I remember Vikram Seth very famously went to Dune School, and then he went for the old boy, whatever
No,
the
he was
prize
he was the chief guest at Founders Day.
at Founders Day, and basically told everybody about what a horrible time
He got up
had
there
here.
and he just told them he trashed the school. And he said it was the worst experience of his life. And the whole board of directors was sort of going into a coma, rigor mortis. I don't think they could wait to kick him off the stage. I had a very good experience, actually.
Yeah, so I was wondering how you. So you were you the arty boy?
I was arty. I wasn't sporty for sure, though I had great spirit and tried to everything. And I actually made cross-country captain. I don't know why, and got the cups. I always put my mind to it. And I did art, I debated, I did music, I did theater. But yeah, I was more arty. It's just, so much of it depends on your friends and how much. I had great friends, in my batch. And from all different, from the scholars to the very gamesome to all-rounders, and I think it really is about your personality in the end.
I heard when you say not sporty that there was something called the Z team or the Z game. What was that about?
Well, if you weren't good at sports, you were classified. So there was A, B, C, D, E, and then there was X, Y, Z. So I was in Z game, and one of my closest friends is here. It was in Z game, and there was a third person, that Shankar Sen, and we just sat there and hung out and talked, and we were backs. And every time the ball came this way, we ran that way, and we knew one rule: say offside, offside. So they had to stop the game. I think that's how we survived it. I think we might have been expelled for our prowess, if not.
So, do you think Dune and the experience you had there shaped you in terms of as an artist, in terms of sense of style?
No, I don't think it shaped anything in that regard. But what it did do, because we grew up, my dad was in the Navy, and we spent an inordinate amount of time in South Bombay. And when you went to a school like Dune, you were suddenly with these, Sardars from Bhatinda, and all sorts of people that you'd never have met. and you had to coexist in. And they were, a lot of them were not very pleasant, especially when they were senior. I mean, actually quite mortifying. So if you get through that, it's like you can know you can get along with anybody, you can deal, you can manage. So I think in terms of the life that I was going to lead subsequently, which was not isolated in, as a banker or someone abroad, and I've traveled to all parts of India and I've lived everywhere, I think that experience was very useful because you just know how to roll with the punches. You can deal with anybody, you can talk to anybody, you can stay in any kind of crummy hotel. Even today, it's not something you do by choice, but if you have to, you just do it. And I think boarding school was great for that.
Did you emerge as a coconut, though?
I, that's an interesting question. I think to some degree we all were. I think, when we grew up, went to schools that we did the English curriculum. We didn't want to speak Hindi. We didn't think Desi. We thought Hindi was lingo. And today, I'm a very different person. I mean, if someone had told me even 15 years back that I'd go to the Kumbh Mela to look at draping and actually have a brilliant time through the night in half a day, I would have said that's not possible. These things were not inner thing. We grew up in the Navy. It was all very isolated and clean. We loved going to NDA because we could do sport or whatever. And we had a kind of military background, and we lived in cantonments. And many years later, my father would ring me and say, "Coming to dinner, remember you can't wear a churidar kurta." And I'd say, "Why?" He said, "Because it's the mess." And I said, "But that's so archaic." He was remarried. So I said, "What's your wife wearing?" He'd say, "A sari." I said, "Well, I can come in a sari. I run a studio." And he would be mortified because he knew I was fully capable of doing it. So we've stuck with a lot of these silly rules that I suppose are perpetrated by coconuts. And so I think that I'm not a coconut, I just sound like one.
Also, but you have an event at Bengal Club tomorrow morning.
That's with
You could,
Laila Taibji.
yeah, you could go in a sari to the Bengal Club. They have all kinds
I
of
don't
dress
have a
rules.
particular desire to cross dress. So, and I don't think there's an issue with people wearing saris in the Bengal club. So,
No, so that would be fine. But there's a lot. I think there are a lot of rules about what men.
well, the thing is, Bengal club is so out. So I wouldn't even know till right now it was at the Bengal club. So I haven't really focused on it.
I wanted to take you and the audience through. I was wondering how to structure this, and I thought I'd take some key dates that occurred to me while reading the book, and have you talk a little bit about it. So one thing is 1987, right? And that's when Ensemble opens. But before that, as you mentioned, you go to Wharton, and then you come back. Why did you come back?
Well, my father was becoming chief of naval staff, and he was told by the government that he could not continue as the trustee of a company that he was overseeing for my mother. My mother had passed away a few years prior to this. So I had no choice. I finished and came back 3 days later to work in this company. And I spent a year actually trying to sell oil filled equipment and clean it up. And I went to those horrible places. And after a year, when we started getting a lot of business, I finally said, listen, I can get the business because they said, Mr. Tarun, don't make all these presentations. ऐसा है आपको 10% मिलेगा हमको if you make 100 you have to give us 10. Basically that's the kickback, right? And when you do that, voila, the business just starts to flow. And I just thought, I'm not going to spend my life doing this. Anyway, concurrently with this, because we were quite broke, my wife started modeling and we had met Rohit Khosla, and this idea when we were to shoot came about of actually driven by an India Today story about how there was this new burgeoning consciousness of fashion in India. India had been socialist. There was a sari culture. It was all kind of pared down. The Maharajas had lost their privy purses. Now people were, I think a little tired. India had sort of opening up. There was a lot more exposure, and people wanted jeans and they wanted to wear other things. And there was an India Today article, cover story that talked about this, and we came right on the cusp of that, where we also thought that, Sal would say, there's so many beautiful Indian things available abroad, but you don't get any of this in India. And why is it? And so I'd ask these people, why don't you supply us? And they said, no, 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 no. It's all for export. And, export was very mollycoddled and it was tax free. And of course, they were worried they would get copied. But I said, 40 years after independence, we are still standing there with our best produce for the white man, and we Indians will shop at what was called fashion streets, which were export rejects. And if you really want this country to evolve and go back, I didn't even know go back. I wasn't aware. I mean, this was all a fluke. Don't you think we should sell our best products to Indian? And that's how it started. And we started pulling Indian designers out of Western labels. That's how Rohit Khosla came in the picture and telling Indian designers who even work for Western labels, why don't you design something for India? What's your point of view as an Indian? And beads and baubles notwithstanding, a lot went into this and it just evolved from then. I just think it was the right place at the right time. It's not like as if it made money immediately or anything, but it just was like a bomb that went through and was emulated and stores came up. It was just at that tipping point where this is what people wanted. And it was a beautiful big space because it was a part of that old family business that was just lying fallow. We would never have on our own been able to afford to do something like that. And it was done in a very simple, stylized way with a lot of thought. We went abroad to look at stores and what was working. And this typical crowding of Indian boutiques and running in and the exhibition come sale was the thing. And people would try clothes over their shalwar kameez. I mean, how you're ever supposed to understand fit doing that in this frenzy? So this changed that game, and it actually intimidated people for a long time. But we were set on that mission.
But can you talk about the first time you did a show in the store, which was
It
something
was the
different?
opening night.
It was the opening
Yeah.
night. So what was that like? What were the hurdles?
It was traumatic. I mean, there's no other word because we were like, the blind leading the blind, except for Rohit Khosla, who knew it all because he had worked at Versace and Albert Nippon and had been part of the fashion establishment abroad for at least 10 years. But it was like, I mean, telling people who knew nothing. We had these 6 models and they'd do every collection of a designer and then go back in. It was just, but nobody knew better. And as they say, if you can't dazzle them with your brilliance, baffle them with your bullshit. It just came together. It was on the cover of Bombay magazine. India Today put it out and, it was launched. It wasn't very crowded. It was very special. It kind of bespoke of a new energy. And we had wonderful models back then. Shamoli Verma, people who had come back from their stint abroad and were just excited to be doing something that seemed Indian and modern.
When did you first meet Meher Jassia?
Probably soon afterwards, she started shooting for Rohit. I don't remember when exactly, but we did a lot of work through the early 90s. A lot. Till she gave up modeling suddenly because she was going out with a Rajput boy and thought he might marry her. That's exactly why she stopped modeling. But anyway,
So in 1987, when you're doing fine clothes for the discerning men and women,
we were trying.
we were.
They were a lot of it was costumey because everything had to be a statement and no one knew anything. The principles of merchandising is filling a store with things that people need at that time. So now when you walk in, you'll find something in November for the festivals or weddings that you won't find in May. The fabrics will be different. We were clueless. We just did things that we thought were beautiful. But just that freedom and that almost in a way excess, it excited people, and some of the people there, like Rohit Bal or Abu Jani Sandip Roy, did exquisite embroideries that India had just been deprived and starved of all of this. So it really just, came like a bang. Mapu had that costumes of Royal India show at the Met and went to Japan. They started doing under Pupul Jaikar, the Vishwakarma exhibitions, reviving and showing exquisite textiles. I mean, I didn't, at least in my growing up years, we didn't know it or see any of this. We wanted Levi's, we wanted to be West, we wanted to be at the club. I mean, that's what it was.
I remember we couldn't get Levi's, so we used to get something called Lavis, which was like Levi's but with an A instead of
Oh,
the E.
lavish. Quite
So we
clever.
would wear our Lavis too.
Well, we would buy them at the flea market in Goa, and those hippies were really scuzzy looking. And my mother was convinced that we could get VD. Of course, she was through to own jeans. So everything that we bought would come home and be boiled in a huge dekchi, and then hung, and then reboiled, and then we could wear it.
Instead of like double fried clothes, you wore double
Exactly,
boiled
double boiled,
clothes.
yeah. Might have been ahead of the curve in this whole, you know, fashion of distressing clothes.
But in 1987, did do you think the word modern meant something different to you than when on the cover of your book right now?
I think for me at that time, honestly, modern went after we looked at the way people shopped and the way retail worked abroad. Is just having a space where you could breathe, where there was no pressure to buy, where you didn't have to be in a frenzy. We were very particular, and we tried as best as we could and knew and learned along the way about the finish of the clothes, how they were made. It was a new way of retailing. There were beautiful sari stores like, say, Indian Textiles at the Taj, but they just had the rolls, and no one had to try anything because a woman just draped a sari on herself. And most people still went to tailors. And tailors weren't giving people a good fit. I mean, there's a classic menswear tailor, fine, he might, but a lot of women were miserable with the shalwar kameez. I mean, most people aren't trained to do this. So when a whole culture is in a transition, maybe albeit more in urban India and then following later, you need to have solutions. Today we can say there's a huge, amazing ready-to-wear industry, whether you like it or not, from 400 rupees a cardigan or a kurta to anything. I mean, online, offline, there's a whole spectrum. You get sizes, they'll order for you. None of this existed. I mean, there was a boutique culture, perhaps, which basically tailored what people wanted. Even when people came in to see us, what we called the bespoke, they were often like, I want this. I'm like, we're not tailors. We can't do it. Because in the beginning, you don't know, and you try, and then just see these scary things that you produce for somebody because you've been bulldozed. So how it works.
Did people bring you like little like pages cut out from magazines and say, I want this
Well,
dress?
there was nothing out of Indian magazines per se at that time. There were no real major fashion magazines. But there were a lot of these, what we call the aunties, who'd buy Swiss scarves and little crepe de chine prints, and they all had tailors in their house, and then make them draped dhoti shalwars, which they'd wear with these little... I mean, it was quite creative, and they improvised and did what they did, but not so much to us. And frankly, even if they did, you could come and show me a Claude Montana jacket. I don't know how to make it back then. I still probably can't make it. It's not what we do.
So one of the lines you used in the book was at that time, there was people were basically saying bye bye khadi, hello brocade.
Well, suddenly there was the whole thing, Jaya Bachchan and Devika Bhojwani did this Khadi line. And Jaya Bachchan, her husband was the biggest movie star, and she'd stand behind the counter, and all these women would fly in and buy these Khadi clothes with plastic rhinestones, badly overlocked. I mean, people even didn't know how a kurta was meant to be leveled, because if you want a sari all your life, it's not been a relevant thing to learn. So I think everyone is just kind of done with socialism and that whole thing, the whole mood. And look, who loves luxury more than us Indians? That's why the Brits behind this haloed monument were here.
Yes.
And it's going straight back there. It's something that we Indians are incredibly shocking about. And so if someone like, say, Abu Jani does this brocade mad dhoti with a coat. And for the few people who saw it or could afford it, it was like, wow, because suddenly there was something completely novel. It was familiar, and yet it was breaking new ground. And that was exciting.
Looking just like a wow.
Well, whether it looked like a wow or not, that was, someone's personal opinion. But Asha Sarabhai did these clothes, and from printed saris to bandhani abhas and monochrome, which she did with Issey Miyake. No one had seen anything like that. It was exquisite. And it inspired us, the finish, the way the catalogs were done in Japan. I mean, we just went into a crash course of what is possible.
Now I want to take you to another year. We talked about 1987. This is 1991. And you've just got your first serious sort of big bridal commission in Mumbai, and the riots break out. Tell us what
I
happened.
mean, talk about a nightmare. This was Rajendra Kumar's daughter. Oh, she was marrying, yeah, she was Rajendra Kumar's daughter. And she was marrying Sindhi, and they wanted this and temples. And, we were just going with the flow. We had never done anything like that. That outfit entered. They were behind the barat with the outfit. Luckily, barats take a long time in dancing. So we were trying to get in. And that outfit must have weighed 30 kilos, if not more. All this heavy zardozi in these panels draped. I mean, it was insane. I don't know how that worked out. They had to put strips and extra suspenders to hold it up. And she's quite a petite thing. Like, you live and learn, It will never happen today. I think we were just being too ambitious because people pushed us. And, I actually think when you get branded and given so much bhav so early, it's actually a negative thing. Because A, people think that you know much more than you do. And that's always dangerous. And I think I suffered from the imposter syndrome for 20 years. Because I said, man, why do they think this? Now I'm in control of what I do. I certainly wasn't back then.
And so, no, so then this thing is, and then the Mumbai riots are breaking out, and all I
Well,
im-
so that means that the wedding's happening in the compound because they live in Pali Hill in a big bungalow, and you know exactly people rioting outside Pali Hill. But we had to get there, and then that next afternoon was Priya Paul's wedding, so everyone had to board a 2 a.m. flight in Delhi to get those clothes there. It was chaos.
and what about the fact I assume most of your embroiderers and people working were Muslim?
Yeah, they were. I mean, we were looking out to them, and you know, in the context of what happens in India today, the Hindus locked the Muslims in. They said, "Y'all are going to stay here. We're going to get you food." It was amazing. We've never had an incident in 33 years. Sorry, that's on a side, but maybe manage. You know, you have to do it. You have to do it. You can't let a bride down.
What do you think would be, if then was actually it made me interested in the idea of we're talking about fashion, but fashion is obviously also sort of political in the sense that there was a time when all the political leaders wore khadi. And then I think there's a quote in the book where someone says, finally, when Inder Kumar Gujral becomes the prime minister, we have a prime minister who wears a normal safari
Oh,
suit and has ditched the khadi.
I remember, I won't take his name, sitting next to this guy who's now, I think, a chief minister or something. And in this khadi, and I just kind of pushed that thing back. And there was a diamond Patek Philippe. I mean, what's the point? You know, who are you trying to kid? But there it was glittering away. They cost about 5, 6 crores, I think. So, whatever. We know what the khadi story really is.
So, so that was 91. But did that experience, with the Muslim embroiderers who are bearing the brunt or scared because of the riots, did that change how you or affect how you looked at the people doing the embroidery, the weavers, and their rights and what
You know, I
it
have to tell
meant?
you that fashion actually has been the most inclusive. No one cares. You know, if you're good at what you do, nobody gives a damn. People have been, you know, all the things that are quote unquote woke today has always been fine in fashion. You can come, you can cross dress, you can be anything. Fashion's been amazing that way. And really, Hindu, Muslim, anything is just, I mean, no one's bothered. You know, people celebrate together. They had a langar for the Ram temple 2 days back, which I wasn't thrilled about. But the Muslims sat and had that langar, you know, because I said, listen, no flags in here, no slogans. So it's really everything's about the environment you create, and that's all it is. It's that simple.
Were you invited to go to the Ayodhya temple launch?
No, no.
What would you have worn if you went?
I don't think I would have gone. So I haven't spent any time on it. I do have nice khadi dhotis.
I'm going to take you to 2004 now, and this is you're the first Indian designer at Milan. What was the learning experience there?
Well, it was a lot of pressure because we kept going back and forth, and the press in Italy were very excited about this. And they'd keep make us cut every neckline down to 11, and every skirt had to go higher. You see, it's quite short, all those images. And that's when I began to understand after a season, even though it went really well, that A, we weren't ready to do the kind of numbers that they wanted. We actually screwed it up. The show was great. And secondly, if you're sitting in India, which is much more conservative, the Japanese want something else. If you're trying to do Italy or Europe, you don't know what to do for their winter, right? We didn't understand that there's something called holiday, and you're trying to do normal. So we just didn't fit in. Either you fully focus on that, or then I decided that, listen, we'll just focus on India, for better or for worse. We understand what Indians want in India and abroad. And from that, as it's becoming simpler now, it's extending to other communities and the Arab world. You can't be anything, everything to everyone. We don't have a Western fabric base or, you know, an aesthetic or even a need to be. So then you become derivative. So it was a great experience. I learned a lot by being there. And, you know, we sold in wonderful stores, but it just became a different whole business and mindset for a tiny little studio. So we just kind of petered it up and continued to focus on. I think as a designer, if you design for the life you live, it's much more relevant in anything than trying to second guess what some Italian wants in winter. I don't think it works.
So when you said 11, for those of us who don't understand fashion lingo, what is 11, 7? What are these numbers? What do they mean?
What do you mean by
When you said
11?
the neckline,
Oh, sorry, neck depth. Most Indian women want 6 or 7 inches after they start feeling like a little cleavagey. Well, the Italians want their necklines cut even on a kurti to 11 inches down to here. They don't care if the bra shows or they don't have a bra. So for a small studio to manage different patterns for Japan, different patterns for India, it just became too much. And we were doing bridal, which is a whole different look. So when I look at somebody like Rahul Mishra today, who's had great success in Paris, is being a great name, I'm like, my God, he's doing these couture pieces that look like discs. And in 2 weeks, he's going to show an Indian collection of lehenga. How does it even sit in that head? You know? Someone like Gaurav Gupta, still there's a similarity, you know? So I just decided back then, it was a different time and we were way much smaller. I wouldn't even do it today. I might still go back at some point and start showing abroad, but it'll be this Indo-Western, what Dries does, or with our drapes that we've now mastered, with little jackets and boreos, an India modern identity.
And when you're talking about drapes, which is of course what you're very so well known for, there's a quote which is in the book, and a lot of profiles of you also carried, which is when Meenal Modi comes and tells you, "I want to look like I am wrapped in a turban," and it's a wonderful quote. But when I if somebody came and told me that, I would have no idea what that meant. When
Well,
she
I'm
told
sure
me
I
the
had no
book,
idea either. She just was a diva who made everything sound very glamorous, you know. And you know what people don't think about is that everyone thinks today of fashion in terms of color and embroidery, some textile. But actually, the beauty about subcontinental fashion is the way Indians draped fabric. And it's like its own language from different region to different region. So just as you have different languages or dialects of food, 200 years back, I came out of parachute. I would know, even if people were wearing ivory or muslin, what part of the country they were from just by the way they draped fabric on themselves. Because even us men, we wore safas or turbans, or, you know, there was a basic kurta, the kedu, but the dhotis were tied, the lungis were tied. You wear shawls in winter. She's wearing a draped piece of textile and a draped shawl. That's what India was. And Bengalis draped it differently to, say, the South Indian or the Kurgi or the Gujarati. And that's something that's being lost because it's something that you have to be comfortable doing. Hello. So basically, I think that this whole draping journey and going out and seeing what people wear and going to the Kumbh, most people at the Kumbh aren't just pieces of fabric. It's so creative if you look at it for what it is. And it's not even trying to be fashion. It's out of bare necessity. They're just managing the scraps. But if I saw that on the John Galliano or Dries Van Noten ramp, people would be like, oh my God. So we just start taking influence from our own culture before you don't see this anymore, which is not too far away.
so 2020 is this on? Well, in 2020, coming to 2020, you go. No, which year did you go to Kumbh? That was 2013. No, 2013. So, what was? How did that change you?
I don't think it changed me. What it did to me, because we walked from about 3 in the morning, you know, when it starts, till about 4 the next day. And then we went back with the photographer and we just photographed things. So if you look in the book, there are images of sadhus and the clothes that we draped inspired by them. That was the only thing we were looking for. Of course, at that time, we did it all in oranges and saffron, but now we do the same things in ivory. That was just a point of departure. But it's truly creative to see them in the ash, the dreadlocks, the rudrakshas. I mean, it's, and let me tell you, the evening before I'd gone down to the Akhara and somehow the Nag Sadhu there was told I was a designer and he called me. And, you know, they sit there naked and he actually had one hand cut off. But he still wanted me to advise him on how to decorate his mukhat, the crown and wire that he's wearing on him. So, you know, maybe even they have a fashion need. They want to go through the procession looking cool.
So you draped a Naga sadhu.
No, I didn't drape him. I just pinned things on his thing. They're Nanga sadhus, so nothing to drape.
We're going to take a few questions from the audience, but before we can
Yeah, sure.
can we do a quick sort of rapid fire while we take? No, it'll be fairly harmless. I'm
That's
going to say
fine.
must do in 24 hours in Kolkata for you.
Walk at Victoria Memorial.
There you go. We can do that. Take care of
I
that.
did it already this morning.
There you
and
go.
I'll do
Done.
it tomorrow.
Greatest fear that people don't know about.
Well, as a designer, you always think, what if I don't have an idea tomorrow?
Has that happened?
In short bursts, you just have to go and exercise and walk with music for 2 days and it's back. Yeah.
Fear of non-design, any non-design fear.
Not really, not at 61.
Turbulence,
Used to, not
but
anymore. Once
but
you
you
skydive, you understand it's just wind movement.
guilty pleasure.
Too many to mention.
Most fashionably dressed Indian public figure.
Well, certainly the one who cares the most about his different looks is our Prime Minister. But who's the most fashionably dressed? I would know. I think Mahua Moitra. What?
That got a cheer
Yes.
from the
But
audience.
she is. She wears simple, beautiful saris and looks amazing.
Most unlikely celebrity that you have draped.
That I have draped. Probably Simi Garewal.
Why?
Because she's very into what she wants in her own life and she's not caught up in all of this. So it's unlikely. Today's celebrities are very caught up.
Biggest fashion faux pas.
Listening to what clients want and just blindly creating it. Because we did that in the beginning before we even could visualize. And if I say so, we created some horrible things. And I'm so sorry for those people who actually went out, sailed out, and then you'd hear 2 days later, oh my God, what the hell was this woman wearing? And you'd just be cringe and sliding into a wall, you know.
Let's take a couple of questions. So there's a question right in front.
Good evening, sir. I love your work, and I just have a question that we can see that you are working in the luxury industry, but what would be your suggestion for students or uh, people of our generation who don't have that kind of budget, and what's your thought process on thrifting and pre-loved clothes?
Well, we do a campaign called Love and Relove, where we show, in fact, we're showing that at Chennai, how to reuse things. I think it's a great thing. None of us started with these budgets. You know, Galliano didn't start with the budgets. Most students start broke. If you work hard and you start with the designer and make your mistakes or whatever industry, people work their way up. I mean, most people don't have it on a platter. And if they do, usually they screw it up, was what I've seen. So I don't think thrifting is you can have a style in India with anything in any budget. In fact, a lot of people and a lot of women who have one of my first quotes at Fashion Week, they were not amused. They said some of the most beautiful women I know don't even know what a design is. They wear handloom, they wear kajal, they wear silver, they wear fresh flowers. And they're like, how could you say that? I said, but it's true. When we change that, we'll do what we have to do. I think that anything's possible if you want it. But you have to stick to it and always go, doesn't matter thrift or luxury. There's a lot of beauty in all the different layers. They just are different niches and have different requirements, therefore. Yesterday I was at for our secondary brand, I was at a store, I don't remember where, looking at these wholesale embroideries, and this old man walked in to deliver a package, a coolie or whatever, in this check shirt, a lungi, a head wrap. It was exquisite. I photographed him at once and sent it to all the design teams and said, look, this could not have cost 800 rupees. It was stunning. I wish I could put it up. So, it's what you take from that and make from it.
Another question? Did you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. This is Aditya. I'm a media producer. Uh, Thing is, I think it's the first time I'm seeing dresses which can be worn by the public, which has been designed by a designer. So normally the dresses I actually see in a fashion ramp, I literally doubt if they actually will find their way into the market. So do they do it for, there are like very abstract kind of designs which no one will actually, so why do they do it? It's for
Well,
abstract expression or there's a market?
It's both. You'll be surprised what people wear. Might not be in huge numbers, but also fashion weeks and couture. So there are designers like Armani, just to give it because they're much bigger, who will always show beautiful wearable clothes. And John Galliano, who was brilliant, would show conceptual things from which the stores would do watered-down versions. But today, more and more, the world is about the wearable. And the biggest brands, Chanel, Dior, everything's wearable. In fact, I look at the couture and said, why are they even doing couture? This looks like ready to wear. It was a time in the 60s, 70s, 80s when it was a very small, bored, rich elite who bought the clothes, and to show the spectacle or technical prowess that happened.
One more question. Did you have a question? Over there. Second.
Hello, sir. So I wanted to ask that has Bengal inspired your style ever, and how?
Okay, we'll take one more question and then answer it together. So I think right down there.
Hi, I had a question about the origins, the way you started off, and my memory of the 1970s and 80s is that basically we lost so much of our memory of the craftsmanship, the textile heritage of the country. And what was that like for you when you started out? Did you have to actually go and find a craftsman? Did you have to actually search for textiles?
I was very lucky because Martan Singh had just done Vishwakarma, and he had documented all the master craftsmen in this country. So I'd go to Bhuj and I'd just drive with all the Bhuj dresses. I'd go to Banaras. So we were taken straight there. I didn't have to learn it. We were not relevant for a lot of it because they were woven as draped textiles. But a lot of it's come back and more. And now there's a huge new dynamism because a lot of younger, exposed, and more confident weavers are working on what they want to do. The textiles out there today are amazing.
And about Bengal, did you have anything?
Well, I'm here a lot now because it does inspire me. I love the color palette. There's wonderful workmanship here, and there's lovely textiles.
So before we finish, can I just ask you, what is the biggest change you think fashion needs right now, especially when it comes to the big fat Indian wedding? Because so much of Indian
I
fashion
just think
seems
it has to be
about.
wearable. I think people have to make sensible decisions to buy clothes that they're going to love and reuse, buy quality, and not be this spectacle and not think they're going to be Jodha Akbar because it's all become ludicrous. That's it. Be true to yourself.
Be true to yourself is a good note to end on. Thank you so much. And I guess will you be going to the bookstore? Yeah. So you can meet Tarun at the bookstore.